Hello everyone, welcome to the Famelab Southeast 2026 semi-finals. Our two finalists will present their chosen scientific ideas but made digestible and entertaining. Thank you as well to Famelab for being here. Just a few tech bits. Basically, if everyone can stay on mute until they'd like to speak, just so there's no interruptions or any phones going off, that would be amazing. And before we hear from our two finalists, let's meet the judging panel. So I'm head judge today, alongside two more experts in the fields of live broadcast film and science communication. I'll introduce myself first. My name's Isabel Lamarechal. I'm head producer at KMTV Creative Productions and an NCTJ accredited journalist. My job involves being the series director on our Generation series, supported by Innovate UK and the BFI. That includes Generation Genome, which aired on ITVX. I lead the production team working on News Nuggets as well, a TV programme looking to engage primary school students in current affairs and their community. I direct, produce, film and edit documentaries around the world, which look to make complex topics accessible. That includes research. I'm also an experienced presenter, adding today to my list of things that I've done, which is all very exciting. Let's meet our next judge, Dr. Gregory Boardman. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, good to be here today. I run a small media company which acts as a production entity and also a consultancy. We've delivered programs for BBC, for Sky over the last decade or so. We're increasingly actually focusing on content for young people in education as the market shifts for media content. And I've also gone back to university in the last decade. I'm currently studying at the Institute of Education, looking at meaning making in the primary school classroom relating to music.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And Naila Mohammed, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, so my name's Naila. I am a video journalist here at KMTV. I've got a postgrad degree in international journalism from City University of London as well. And then I also did my studies in English language theory in Sheffield. That was quite exciting. Very excited to be here today and hear both of your studies and your pitches. My day-to-day, I go out, I film stories, and I kind of turn them into packages, or sometimes I write them up as an article for Kent Online as well, who's kind of like the sister company to KMTV. I also present and do lives and social media, so we dabble a little bit in everything, and I do sometimes help out Izzy as well with the production side, which is really, really fun and exciting.
Yes, you're amazing to have on the team. Now, let's move on. Together, we'll decide on a winner based on the 3 C's. That's content, clarity, and charisma. The content of the presentation must be scientifically accurate. We must all be left with clarity and understanding of the scientific concept chosen. And we all want to be left inspired and entertained. Thanks to the charisma and passion of our finalists today, the presentations must be 3 minutes. We'll then go to questions from those watching, so please raise your hand or comment. We'd love to hear from you. And after the presentations, my fellow judges and I will deliberate for 15 minutes, then we'll announce the winner. But let's get to the presentations. Yeah. First up is Oliver Anderson Shah, who studied material science at the University of Cambridge. He's currently a PhD student. Over the past 6 months, he's been making tiny solar panels in Finland, ironically, during the winter darkness. The title of Oliver's talk is A Balancing Act, Embracing Diversity in Battery Technology to Support Cheaper Energy. When you're ready, take it away, and I'll put my timer on.
Thank you. Hello. Did you know that the amount of energy that humanity uses in a whole year is provided to the Earth by the sun in just 1 hour? There is such an abundance of renewable energy, but we need battery storage technology to harness this and deal with the intermittency of sources like solar and wind. And we need a diverse range of energy technology, of battery technologies to be able to do this. So a question for everybody: how far away are you from a battery? Given watches and mobile phones within arm's reach, I am confident that we are all surrounded by lithium-ion batteries, and for good reason. They have high power density, so they can be light and powerful, and excellent stability, lasting 1,000 cycles, which can correspond to 10 years if you're charging your devices twice a week. And this is thanks to their cage-like structure, in which there's a cage and the lithium ions can go in and come out repeatedly over time. But let's move on from lithium ion batteries. I would love to talk about a plethora of technologies, from sodium ion batteries to pumped storage. perhaps not talking about using oranges as batteries, although I have fond memories of experiments about that at school. But we're going to jump to lithium sulfur batteries, which are more lightweight, but they store the lithium ions slightly differently. So as I said, in a lithium ion battery, we have our cage structure, and the cage is made of within the lithium sulfur battery, you can imagine a flat sheet basically of sulfur, and the lithium ions directly react with this. So there's less extraneous material. The battery can be lighter. In fact, they provide twice the energy for the same mass. So your batteries can be lighter, your electric cars can be lighter, the range can be further. Also, lithium sulfur batteries are easier to recycle because of the fact they have fewer elements in them. That despite recent progress in lithium ion battery recycling using orange peels, pioneered in Singapore, actually recyclability, which is vital when we think about the whole life, is higher for lithium sulfur batteries, so we can take back these elements and reuse them again. Talking about end-of-life considerations, we're coming to the end of the talk, and I want my key message to be that diversity is key within battery storage technologies, because we don't want all of our oranges in one basket. To create greater security and sustainability into the future with battery storage technologies, I think we can create a future which is astonishing. And thank you.
Oh, I see clapping. I can't hear clapping, but I see clapping. Very, very well done. Thank you very much for that. That was perfectly to time as well, so no interruption needed. So we are going to do some questions now. So if anyone in our audience has any questions, do press the raise your hand button. It looks like a little hand doing this. And if not, feel free to comment a question and we'll get to them. But give you time to do this. We'll get some questions from the judges first. So Gregory, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. I guess I'm thinking about batteries, and every time I think about batteries and batteries car, I'm kind of panicking about what we're digging out of the ground. I'd love to know more about how diversity is going to make me feel more secure about the fact I'm not digging stuff out of the ground that might not be my ground to dig out of.
That is a really good point. And in the longer term, moving to a circular economy, which is why we want to prioritize battery technologies which are easier to recycle, is vital. And diversity in battery technologies means that we're spreading the impact. So if we use fewer lithium-ion batteries, we are reducing the demand for cobalt, for example, in the future. And that's a good thing because we're not entirely focused on one technology. So diversifying technologies in general will lead to greater resilience from supply chain shocks, and recycling of batteries into the future is a really big part of that. I'd also like to bring in the concept of pumped storage, which didn't make it into my talk, but it's a type of physical energy storage where you pump water up a hill, which requires elevation, but it's 100% efficient. It doesn't rely on rare earth elements. And for example, in Switzerland, they combine hydroelectric power and dams with pumped storage so they can easily balance the grid so that supply and demand are matched. So yeah, I think diversification is a big part of ensuring that extractivism can be reduced in the future, which is a key concern going forwards.
Thank you. And Naila, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Oliver. Really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed the talk. So you're talking a lot about lithium ions and lithium ion batteries and diversifying. But how feasible is that when we have lithium ion batteries and, like you said, in almost everything in our laptops, our phones, our watches? So in terms of scaling up the other diverse types of battery, how feasible is that, and how would you suggest overcoming that?
This is a really good question. And lithium ion batteries are the undeniable leader in the battery space, as we see that in everything, and they are being produced continually cheaper. But for example, there are some aspects which can be improved on, and having competition from other sources is going to drive all the technologies to become better. This hasn't yet answered your question, but I hope I will get there. Because if we end up with a monopoly of lithium-ion batteries, and when I talk about diversification, also these are in addition to lithium-ion batteries, because they are sufficiently good and sufficiently commercialized that they will be with us for the future. But for example, mobility applications, a lighter battery would take us further, pun intended. And therefore, there are some spaces in the market, not in every case, where other technologies could have an edge. And coming back to pumped storage, if, for example, I'm thinking in the Himalayas, you have the topological requirements, it is likely to be cheaper in order to use what you have around you. That's not applicable in every case. But yeah, also there needs to be more thinking about this question as well. Feel free to rephrase if you'd like me to pick up on some more nuanced parts of it that I may have missed out, certainly.
Was that okay? Did you have everything answered, Naila? All good?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Perfect. I just wanted to add, in terms of relating this to people's everyday lives, for example, I hear a lot about, say, electric cars. People are worried about, what will happen to the batteries at the end of them. How does this affect people's day-to-day lives and their perceptions on batteries?
Yeah, great question. Perceptions of people's day-to-day lives with batteries. So if we abstract it a little bit more and think about energy prices and the grid based on renewables, of which battery storage is a really big part, that will affect people behind the scenes and in their bills moving forwards. Specifically, because you mentioned electric cars, it's really necessary to think about the whole lifespan of a product. And the end of life is a big part of that. And the recyclability of the batteries is a big deal, such so that, and this comes back to Dr. Boardman's question, we can reduce extractivism into the future. Of a car, all the metals in the body can be recycled. The battery recycling, there's a lot of research going into it at the moment. Actually, with orange peels in Singapore, which I briefly mentioned, they're utilizing the citric acid there to use waste to recycle waste, which is a fantastic idea. There is research going into this. And if your battery is lasting about 10 years, the rest of the car will last longer than that. And therefore, that could be replaced in secondhand battery markets if, and I heard recently that there is technology to know how healthy a battery is. So if you can have confidence in the health of the battery, that would be fantastic to give confidence in a market of how much people should pay for it and how long its lifespan will be after that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. No, that is very interesting. I also have a question from Jill, and she asks, how far are we from being able to wear battery chargers to power up our lives on the go? That's a fun question.
Yeah. I will come to the question. If I deliberately misinterpret it, I remember studying ambient energy harvesting, and I don't know if anyone's been lucky enough to go to a Coldplay concert, but they have kinetic dance floors where they generate energy from people's dancing. And the same principle can be, pun intended, woven into shirts with energy generated from your movement, or in a slightly different way, from the heat of your body. So that could be like a sort of as wearable energy generation. In terms of wearable batteries, it's not something that I am aware of specifically. But if you think of a battery pack that you can power your phone with, that is very easily portable. So definitely we are close to that, if that's what you're driving at, Jill, with that.
Yes, I saw a nod and a thank you from Jill. Awesome.
Awesome.
And Gregory, I do see your hand up again. Would you like
Yes, it's always, I think, it's following on from the last two questions. I love what you're saying there. So like more affordable means more equitable, more efficient. I just wonder if there's a parallel message here that also, whilst things become more accessible and better, that we need to kind of think about the consumerism that goes with the cheaper, bigger, better. And I just wonder who you need alongside you to kind of promote that message of consume less, but actually what you consume less is better and cheaper and more efficient.
Yes, this is really stepping into the Jevons paradox of when something is cheaper, then you can use more of it instead of leading to a reduction overall. If we step back from thinking about electric cars, because those are quite consumer-based, we could think about electric-based public transport, for example, and those decisions are coming more on a government level. Or if we zoom out further to the larger grid scale system, battery storage there would be the purview of the national grid or other operators at that level. And with regulation, there's less thought about consumerism there, but the message it's a message of frugality and wanting to have a smaller but more concentrated experience, I think. Yeah, the messaging absolutely, I'm getting slightly lost in my thoughts, but the messaging absolutely needs to be there that the ability to consume more doesn't come with the necessity to do it. And I think government policy, but also what people's actions and how we talk to each other and on a local level and influence the people around us is a big part of that as well. So top down, absolutely, and bottom up as well. Both can have really significant impacts.
Excellent. Was that the Jevons paradox that you said?
Yes, Jevons.
Okay, great. Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I'm aware of time, so Naila, if you've got a question, this will be our last one.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I'll make it really quick. So going back on a couple of other questions, talking about lithium-ion batteries, there's a lot of concerns about lithium-ion batteries. Not that long ago, we had an airport in Luton go up in flames because a battery exploded. I've seen a fire station go up because an electric bike exploded, same with the Lime bikes. And you mentioned lithium sulfur batteries, and sulfur itself is quite a flammable material. So there is always a danger aspect of diversifying batteries. What would you say to the public who may already be skeptical about diversifying batteries?
Yeah, so the reason why batteries are flammable is because of the electrolyte, which sits in the middle of the battery. And at the moment, we use an organic liquid. Organic liquids are flammable. We use it for certain reasons because it does very well. However, there's research into a solid state electrolyte, which would, and this is fire resistant. It's non-flammable because you're removing the flammable liquid from the battery. So that is really a way forward into that. We don't want to diversify into more safety concerns. Equally, the safety of a battery is very dependent on the way in which it is charged. And in commercial applications, that can really, really be minimized through the loading of the batteries. Electric cars are an interesting example because as consumers, we want to charge them very quickly for convenience, even though actually cars tend to spend 23 hours of the day not being used because they're used for commutes most frequently. But charging something more quickly, and if we go back to the cage structure of one of the electrodes in the lithium ion battery, if you're forcing the ions in there more quickly, it's going to degrade more quickly over time. So incorporating more patience into that, which coupled with improvements in charging technology and batteries will mean we will be able to charge more quickly anyway. It's the way forwards, I think.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your questions. It's been a great experience.
Amazing. And now it is time for our second presentation. So I shall introduce Jean Monager, who is currently a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Kent. His research focuses on how people perceive groups, experience emotions, and make sense of themselves and their motivations. He's currently investigating the societal consequences of perceiving certain occupations as heroic, such as nurses, firefighters, and soldiers. The title of the talk is Heroes Can't Be Wrong. And when you're ready, I'll start the timer.
Thank you. I love stories, and I'm sure you do too. In fact, we love stories so much that we can't help to dramatize anything happening around us all the time. According to some psychologists, this is our own very human way of making sense of a complex reality. You do not just watch a football game, you watch a redemption arc of our heroes finally beating the villains. Take our history. I am sure we would all agree that Germany was the villain of the Second World War. France was the victim, rescued by the heroic Britain. But if you were to ask participants from Belarus, then the USSR would take the heroic lead while Britain would be pushed to the margins of history. Our heroes, risking their lives for us to enjoy our freedom. We do not just admire our heroes, we guard them. That is something we observed in our recent surveys. The more British participants heroized their soldiers, the less they tolerated any form of criticism towards them. Even more, they supported shielding the soldiers from any form of persecution following breaking the law. Turns out, we like our heroes so much that we do not want our rules to apply to them. And when you start questioning the heroic narrative, notice how quickly things can backfire. One example out of many. In Australia, Yasmin Abdelmajid, a journalist, posted a tweet during Remembrance Day. She took words honoring the dead, lest we forget, and turned them toward the living, toward people still suffering under war, exile, and Australian policy. The backlash was immediate, ferocious. She received death threats. She had to change her phone number, her house number, and eventually relocated abroad, effectively exiled from her own country. When heroes become sacred, any form of criticism stops sounding like mere disagreement, but starts being blasphemy. Any critics is no longer just an observer, they are villains. Even as I was writing this talk, it was not just the expectation of public speaking that made me anxious. It was the idea of touching on something sacred publicly. I love stories, and I'm sure you do too. It is our very human way of making sense of a complex reality. But when stories place heroes above judgment, they stop helping us to understand the world. They start teaching us who must not be questioned. And this is how stories start becoming propaganda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see the claps again. There we go. I'll make them audible. Here we go. Now it is time for some questions. So again, if you want to raise your hand with the little hand button, please do, or you can comment and I will say your question. But we'll take some questions from the judges first, like last time. So Gregory, do you have a question?
Yes. Thank you for that. It was very kind of thought-provoking. The thing that's at the forefront of my mind at the moment is, in terms of this notion from a philosophical point of view, who do you want to talk to first? Because by your very notion, you're dealing with a complex audience.
Yes.
Who are already going down the line of a certain route of what Gordon Wells would say, kind of storying. And I just wonder, who do you talk to first to start causing us to reflect on your message?
Right. So right now, one of the ambition of our research projects is to try to get in touch a little bit more with policymakers, to try to emphasize that the heroic rhetoric that we've seen in recent times with applied to healthcare workers, for instance, but like that we can see becoming more and more emphasized as war tensions arise, how this kind of rhetoric can actually have a backlash, come with a backlash. So I think policymakers, people that are like organizing all sorts of events, like every year since the COVID-19 crisis, for instance, we've seen the Hero Award given to nurses, making them aware that like when you start applying a stereotype of heroism, it comes with a lot of things in like how people think about the world. A hero is not only someone who is doing a good work, it's someone who is actually risking their lives to help others. And that means that when you start forcing the heroic rhetoric onto an occupation, you actually start forcing a lot of expectations about what they do. The idea of like sacrificing themselves, but you also enforce a lot of kind of moral blind spots, because heroes in the public imaginations are actually kind of like the sort of people that you do not want to question because they are by definition morally good. There was this moment that I actually kind of liked in the recent media when Donald Trump justified arresting Maduro, capturing him. So something that is illegal, obviously, by international laws. And he described doing it and said that his actions were only bounded by his own morality, which I think is an interesting thing, because a lot of people would consider Trump to be a hero. He has a lot of supporters that like consider him like so. So when he starts saying something like this, for those people that perceive them as heroic in the first place, there is this idea of like, that's actually a very good thing that is only bounded by his own morality because he's a good person. So like there is a place for this heroic narrative in the political discourse. I think it is important for people to try to be aware of that. But to answer to your question, public policies, I think, is like one of the best angle we could have, because like that's probably the more relevant given all the events that are going on in the world. So yeah, I would say like policymakers, journalists.
And do we need more hero academics then to convince the policymakers?
I am not sure, actually. Well, first of all, like, yeah, I guess academics do not fit very neatly the heroic category yet. What we found in our research is that you can actually heroize most occupations. We have tried to heroize a lot of workers, from psychiatrists, journalists, but also underwater welders. So we try to see if like we can actually make people perceive them as actually more heroic, and how that might influence then like criticism acceptability towards them, but also like whether we actually want to deregulate their professions and shield them from prosecutions following doing things that are illegal. But no, I don't think we need heroes. I think we need like a fair view on occupations, what they do, how helpful they are, and try to be grateful for what they're doing without having to force expectations on them.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. And Naila, do you have a question?
I do, yeah. Thank you very much, John, for the talk. You spoke a little bit about expectations there, and I was just kind of curious because people will have different expectations for different occupations. I mean, you mentioned journalists, and obviously I am a journalist, and depending on who you speak to, some people will have a completely different perspective on a journalist. They'll kind of have a different rhetoric to them. So how does the perception of a heroic occupation change between when the public observes them in a moment of crisis versus their everyday lives? And how does this expectation then change?
Yeah, that is a very good question. Actually, like crisis is a key moment to start an heroic rhetoric. Even when you think about fictions, like it's always in the darkest time that we need a hero. And so when you start having a crisis, such as like the COVID-19 pandemics or a war going on in the East, there will be something that will scare people, and the heroic figure will come to actually protect them, because that's what heroes do. They protect people. Can you repeat like your question? I was like fixated on this notion of crisis here.
Yes, so I was asking, how does the perception of a heroic occupation change in the public in a moment of crisis versus when they're working their everyday lives? And particularly, what happens to this expectation when, for example, the heroic or the hero is unable to meet that expectation, or they fail to do so?
Right. So yeah, so for the first part, as I was saying, like a crisis in a narrative rhetoric is ideal for an hero to emerge. That's what we've seen in the past, and we keep seeing it. As for the consequences of the heroes not meeting the expectations, that can be quite dramatic. In the context of nurses, for instance, there are like a plethoric amount of studies that document how it increased burnout. It made them like really emotionally exhausted from the constant pressure of them to be acting selflessly when it's not actually in their contract. So this is something that we are particularly interested in. This idea that heroes is not very, like regulations and heroes don't go well together, basically. When a hero does something dangerous and that is against the law, it's actually okay. That's what heroism is. It's going above and beyond what is expected of you. That I guess, can be positive sometimes, but there are an array of consequences. The one I was talking about, soldiers that might break the rules and not be prosecuted, is one. And then there's the others of like just the workers who are going to be burnt out from this kind of expectations because they will be exploited into working long hours without expecting any reward from it, except maybe daily rounds of clapping. And that is something that has been perceived as like really unfair by the healthcare force during the last pandemic. So yeah, there are dramatic consequences for workers along the lines.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, and I do have a question. Do you think political division has maybe amplified these roles of heroes and villains?
That's an excellent question that we actually want to look into. We like to be thought-provoking, as Dr. Waldman was saying. We have been conducting our perception of soldiers before and during Remembrance Day, and we surprisingly haven't observed a lot of difference in the perceived heroism of soldiers during Remembrance Day. There was no poppy effect that we observed. And right now, like, our interest is to replicate that for the next Remembrance Day, for the next November 11, and try to assess political ideology to see if maybe our effect can be accounted by the fact that not everyone actually is sensitive to poppies during Remembrance Day. So there are also like recent research that is quite fascinating about the morality and how we perceive group that is suggesting that what distinguishes people from the far spectrum, from not the far, the right spectrum and the left spectrum of the political spectrum, sorry. Right-wing ideology, and left-wing ideology would be the assumption of victimization of groups. People from the left might be more inclined to believe that some groups are really victimized and other groups are really not victimized, whereas people from the right wing might be more moderated in like their views of who is a victim and who is not, and tend to think that no one is actually more a victim than another. You can be a CEO and be as much as a victim as an immigrant, for instance. That's saying it quite plainly. That's not there is still a difference, but this difference is really more pronounced on the left side of the political spectrum. So we are going to try to look into political ideology to see if we can see the same things with heroism. Maybe we can expect maybe the poppies to be more effective at creating heroism for people that are more right-wing than left-wing. We will definitely be looking at that in the future.
Absolutely, yeah. And I guess comparing jobs like nurses and policing, for example, I guess that's also quite an interesting comparison too. No, I found that very interesting. So we've got 2 questions. I'll go to Jill first, just because she typed her message first. So she said, if the human brain is hardwired for storytelling, how do everyday people challenge pre-programmed narratives in everyday life?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. The brain is also hardwired for like narratives, but also stereotypes and basically just simplifying a complex reality. It is very difficult to counter this kind of things. There's a lot of research that has been conducted since like the 90s about, we know that we might have bias that might be racist, and how can we make people be less racist when they have a racist impulse that comes regardless of whether on an explicit level they might be racist or not. Those research have often it's some cul-de-sac in a sense of like, it's hard to actually fight something that is just natural in our brain, that is like to make big categories and use those categories to understand the world. Narratives work like this. They are like a very easy script to understand, and people will apply them. And that's why like we can see that political figures use them a lot. They use frames to try to like say that Maduro is actually a narco politician. I think that's the word he used. That creates an imagery, that creates a story. I'm afraid that like maybe trying to go toward more nuanced stories. There are a lot of stories that do not revolve around tropes of villain, heroes, and victims. There are like a lot of stories that actually try to avoid those kind of cliches. But sadly, maybe education might be the only thing that I could think of to try to get people to understand that the world is not as simple as a Marvel story. But yeah, this fighting against this bias is necessary, and that's something that should be researched more onto how to make people less leaning towards easy understanding of history.
Thank you. And we have Oliver, you've got your hand up, so please feel free to ask a question.
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Jean. This question has become a lot more similar to the last one, but I wanted to ask about storytelling in politics, particularly if lies are included, but people have an emotional attachment to this. How is it possible to counterbalance lies in storytelling in politics? Because we want people to be informed, but yeah, to counterbalance this.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, that's very close to what Jill was asking just now. Indeed, what we're observing is that generally when a political figure lies, but actually lies in a way that sticks from an emotional point of view, it tends to work. And even when it's demonstrated that this was a lie, it still kind of works because there was this emotion going on, a sort of an emotional resonance. That's where, like, yeah, I guess fake news start like converging with this field of research, this narrative psychology field of research. So yeah, like that's actually something that is very difficult to counter when you see that obvious lies of politicians actually still works even after being demonstrated to be false, just because it made so much sense at the moment where it was listened by people. There was like this thing going on in France. We have like the municipal elections that just took place, so quite important elections. And we have a mayor that was elected for Saint-Denis, the city of kings historically in France. And this person is black, the first black mayor for Saint-Denis. And there was this fake news that he would have declared that Saint-Denis is no longer the city of kings, but the city of black people. He never declared that. But it worked so well on the media. People just like relayed again this information, because like in the first place, there is like something really eloquent about phrasing it this way. And it just like got resonance with the fact that French people are racist. So like it made all the media talk a lot, and there was this emotional impact that it just worked. And even when it was demonstrated to be false, which is like 1 week ago, we still talk about it. That's still something that like works from an emotional point of view. So yeah, it's terrible. And that's like a terrible thing about humans being so sensitive about the emotional impacts and the sense that narratives can make, and less so about like the truth of the statements. So that is something that requires more education for sure. Thank you.
Thumbs up. Now that is it for our presentations. Thank you both very, very much. It's now time for us judges to deliberate. So Gregory, Naylor and I will leave the session for 15 minutes. Then we'll be back to announce the winner of the Famelab Southeast semi-final. Very exciting. Do stick around, we won't be long, and we'll log back in to this meeting very, very soon. Thank you very much for your patience. We will move on to our feedback and then announce the winner. So Gregory, can we start with you? What were your thoughts on the presentation?
Well, congratulations to you both, really. Both very important topics in completely different ways. And I wasn't sure what to expect this afternoon. And I feel like it's like an hour well spent. And it's a shame that we're not in person and kind of having a seminar. I'm a member of the Philosophy of Education Society of Great Britain, and every seminar ends up with a kind of a drinks or coffee afterwards, which then goes on for another 2 hours, where you kind of actually get into the real nitty gritty of what you want to do. And actually commend you both. I would like to kind of extend those conversations with you both, partly out of my paranoia about I don't have a car, I want to get a car, am I going to buy an electric car? Hopefully, Oliver, you can kind of guide us on that process and kind of please stick with that. But I think it's important there to kind of think about that frugality message alongside your diversity message. I think that's kind of really, really important. And then Jean, that was it's kind of a subject that's close to my heart, the idea of kind of storying and what we do. I think that's what's at play in the music classroom. So I felt that was kind of really relatable. Just one tiny thing at the end, in the penultimate question, you started referring to how hard this was going to be. And I'm starting to go, well, no, you're the researcher, you're trying to convince me. I know it might be uphill. But then I love the fact that in your last answer, you made it highly relevant to now and the highly relevant situation that you kind of referred to in France. So that I thought it was a really nice touch. So yeah, thank you very much. And I kind of wish you both well in terms of your kind of own research and your careers going forward. If there were more people like you, that the world would be in safe hands. Thank you.
Amazing. And Naila, would you like to say a few words about your thoughts?
Yeah, so I want to echo what Dr. Ballman said, and thank you so much for your presentation today. I've learned so much from the both of you. I mean, neither of them are things I'd really thought about before, so really thank you so much. Oliver, I thought you related to the audience quite well. I like the interactive, kind of getting them to think, how close are you to a lithium battery at all times? And I thought that was really interesting. I thought you were quite enthusiastic as well, and the language you used was really simple and really easy to understand. So thank you, because it's not something that I quite easily understand, but I feel like I understood the topic quite well. So thank you very much. And Jean, as well, with you, I like the way that you kind of presented your topic, the way that you owned the topic as well. It was really, like we said, thought-provoking, but also really topical as well. I really like the case studies that you used throughout and kind of how different people can relate to a different case study. So thank you very much for that. And yeah, again, wish you both the best and look forward to seeing what happens with you both next.
Thank you very much. No, that
Thank you.
lovely. And yeah, I mean, just to add, I thought they were both amazing. And by the end of it, I was thinking about the topic and, what we would do moving forward, and making people think is the main thing with these kind of things, right? And that's the first step. So I enjoyed them both very much. I do enjoy all the orange talk. That was very memorable. So it's nice that you brought that in. I didn't know oranges could power anything, actually. So no, that was really good. And there's end of life considerations, and the basket joke. We do love a joke, but yeah, in terms of batteries, just being careful, because there are so many different types of batteries that people are going, oh, what's this? So something to consider. And then Jean just bringing different perspectives in, which I thought was really nice. Bringing in football to cater to different demographics, and also the journalist I thought was very thought-provoking and powerful, and I think everyone can understand a hero-villain story. So in terms of clarity, I thought that was really, really interesting. I do like the circular bit of saying that I love stories as well, so I did notice that. I thought that was great too. So good feedback from us judges, and I hope you take that on board and just let us know if you want to hear anything else, and we'll definitely love to speak to you about it. But I think it's time to announce the winner, and I have the joy of saying that our winner is Jean Berger. Congratulations. A nice clap from everyone. I will make the clap audible. There we go. I hope you can hear it, which means that you will be going to the Famelab National Final in June and be a part of the Famelab Masterclass training. So congratulations. It was a tough decision, and we had lots to talk about as judges for those 15 minutes. And I wish you both the best, because they were both fantastic. Thank you, Oliver and Jean. Thanks to Naila, Gregory, Jill and Daisy for producing, and to everyone watching. Have an amazing rest of your day, everyone. And congratulations again. You're both amazing.